I'm Teresa. Hi. We met before. I remember.
People who are passionate about lifting up other people's lives, even changing the world, are often people who can't sit still. They are ambitious, always ready to roll up their sleeves, aspiring to leadership and wanting results today, not tomorrow. But I also meet many women and some men who don't have the impact they want, despite all that drive and effort. They risk burning out as they keep working harder and harder without getting ahead. And I used to be one of them. Often we women who are such busy bees don't understand why we keep failing to break through to the top, or why some of us seem to abandon their promising careers. When I came back from Turkey to Europe after 2 decades as a news correspondent in print, radio and television, I was surprised that the battle for equality was still not settled in the West. At the same time, it bothered me that usually the only explanation that was given was to blame the men or the patriarchy for blocking us with a glass ceiling. And I'm not saying that that glass ceiling doesn't exist, but I had worked among men all my life and always enjoyed it. I love men. So that argument didn't sit very well with me, even though I am the first one to acknowledge that sexism or machoism or misogyny can seriously hamper a woman's career, and I've experienced that too. Here in Brussels, another thing happened as well. I set up my own coaching practice. I needed to tell people what I was doing now and how I thought I could help them. And while I loved my new career, indeed I was passionate about it, and I was used to performing in public, the words caught in my throat as soon as I started to explain. And I recognized a similar hesitation in my clients. So I decided to get to the bottom of it. That was the journalist in me that needed to find out. So I spent 7 years reading all kinds of scientific publications from different disciplines. I tested my ideas against others. I checked what resonated with clients and what didn't, and I tried out my theories on myself. And I reached the conclusion that besides the glass ceiling of the male-dominated workplace, we can have our own inner glass ceiling as well, manifesting as a lack of self-belief, perfectionism, imposterism, and the like. Digging deeper, I came to see that we all have a we mind and a me mind. Each of us has their unique mixture of the two, but men tend to be more me-minded with a focus on their own well-being, and women more we-minded with a focus on the well-being of the people around them. This is not just about women and men, I discovered, because there are men with a predominantly we mind and vice versa. This is about 2 different thinking styles. And the problem is that we tend to only value the me mind, especially in the professional setting. But once I grasped the full scope of how different these 2 minds actually are, I learned to appreciate both in me. Insecurities like fear of success, imposterism, indeed I had it too, and self-doubt vanished. I realized that I had had my foot on the brake at the same time that I was trying to accelerate, and I learned to let go. I wish for you to stop holding back too. I believe that you will make the world a better place by believing in yourself and feeling accomplished, fulfilled and whole. Understanding what these 2 minds are about will help all of us understand each other better. And an attitude that balances we-minded and me-minded values will lead to kinder and more rewarding relationships at work and in our homes. And in our hearts, I should have written, because all that research, and there are 324 references in the back of the book, so I did my homework, but all that research made me realize the scope of how much I was actually at war with myself. One of the biggest realizations that came through this research was that I was measuring myself against a standard that was unattainable. And I'm not talking about perfectionism. I'm talking about pears wanting to be apples, peaches wanting to be apricots. And I realized that it was not just me who was disapproving of a big part of me. I could see it everywhere around me, and I still see it everywhere around me. This bias goes very deep and is very widespread. And if you don't believe me, read chapter 6, it's all about that. Once my eyes were opened, I realized that it's very hard to feel good about yourself if you're surrounded by a world that doesn't like the way you are or doesn't take it seriously, especially in the professional setting. But once I understood the value of my we mind, and I learned to appreciate it as much as I appreciated my me mind, I reached inner peace. So this book in a way is describing my journey to a sort of coming home to myself. And I hope that it can do this for you too, that it will set you off on a similar journey. Of course, I will be very interested to hear from all of you, if you decide to read the book, what you think of it, how you experience it. And tonight I have two distinguished readers with me, Helene Banner and Georgia Brooks, who have had a look at the book and will join me now in a kind of, well, a free discussion. I have prepared some questions, but we can go freestyle, and maybe you have some questions for me too. But Georgia, thank you very much for hosting this event and for being here with me on the panel, and Helene as well. Thank you very much for being here. My first question to you, and we can take it, I mean, as I said, we can go freestyle, but my first question would actually be,
You haven't touched it yet.
how would you define the we mind and the me mind? How would you define it?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Shall
I
I
will take this one.
let me try. First of all, hello and good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Jessica. Congratulations, Jessica, on your book. Thank you, Georgia, and also congratulations, Georgia, on being mentioned today in the media as one of the outstanding leaders of Brussels. Really,
You are, yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to say the political 40 top women. So we're standing here, you know, very, very privileged to stand here with the two of you tonight. Thank you, Jessica, for having made me one of your first readers of your first book. Perhaps I just speak without Yeah, we do it informally. It means so much to me because I felt reading the book as if you were speaking from my heart. So if I may introduce myself, I have worked for 10 years at the European Commission as a spokesperson, as a speechwriter for the European Commission President, as the head of communication of the Berlin office of the Commission. And since 3 years, I've had my own business where I'm also coaching, supporting women to speak up, find their voice, find their confidence as women leaders. And I felt reading the book, and you know, if I may show this just for the photographers, I felt such a relief because I think you are finding words here forward, so many of us women feel. And so many of us feel represented and recognized by this term that you have coined, the we mind, rather than the me mind. Because that's what I often call the more feminine approach to leadership, is to leading by building alliances rather than thinking in hierarchical terms, building teams, working in win-win situations with women's empathy, their sensitivity for others, their acknowledgement and anticipation even what others may think. And when you coined it the we mind versus the me mind, I was like, oh, thank you so much, because you even found, and that's what the we mind versus the me mind means to me, a term to go beyond the gender lens.
Yeah.
And that is such a breakthrough to me, because so often when we then talk about, as a woman, I lead like that, and you as a man, you tend to be, many men, and I look forward to our discussion, tend to switch off and think, so that's not my discussion,
True.
I'm out of the picture.
Yeah.
Or some men are even, and I understand, very nervous about these discussions, or don't really know how to position themselves, as they get sometimes blocked because of the women quota in their careers and are nervous. And so thank you for introducing us to this, the language that we can use perhaps to share how we feel as leaders in our workplaces when we want to move forward. So thank you for having found the words, and also for speaking on behalf of so many women, I have to say, who often go to work and stumble on the glass ceiling perhaps thinking, and they also share that so much with me, God, I'm just not tough enough yet. I need to become stronger. I need to become just more assertive. I need to hide my emotions. I need to cry in the bathroom rather than in the boardroom. So many women are also told, speak a little bit less, eat, use your voice differently, or, move like that. And I always say, let's just be imperfect, ladies. Let's dare to be ourselves. And I feel like you're giving us with your book the permission to be in our we mind, to recognize that, to feel confident as we minders, and to change the world. I mean, we minders, let's unite and change the workplaces. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Helene.
Ditto. No. So yeah, mic drop. Yes, I fully agree with what Helene said there, and I think it's important to look at this as we're reframing it through leadership. Okay, so again, it's what do we actually want to achieve? And I think what Jessica does very well, and I've been very grateful to have a sneak peek of the book a few weeks ago, is to reframe what is leadership, what is success, and to move beyond the very and I say this fully aware of where I am, beyond the more gendered stereotypes and roles. What I would say is that it is very important for women, and I'm going to quote Elizabeth, to own the room and to really step into their power and their presence, which is not to say that we have to be like men or be a certain characteristical way, but just to feel comfortable in where we are. And a word that I felt resonated with me a lot in the book is belonging, and the sense of collectivism, so that we belong somewhere, we belong in this space, we belong in who we are, and that comfortability can resonate throughout. So as we try and put in practice at the 9, it's not about me, it's really not about me, it's more about my dog, it's more about the team spirit, it's more about we as all of us who can change the tide, move the conversation and the discussion together, as opposed to individuals on plinths or this very siloed, I'm so sorry, I speak with all my hands, you're going to have these terrible pictures, siloed approaches and individualistic goals.
So do you think that, my aim was to indeed find a language that would, and I hate this the jargon, but I have to say it because there's no better word, but that would include the men actually.
Of course.
Because as Helene was saying, many men switch off the moment we start talking about gender, and I switch off too actually. So understanding that this is more about two different value systems that we all have. I think I've tried to make the point really that we all have a we mind and a me mind. We lean to one of the two sides, and as I said, men tend to lean more to the me side, but that's not a dogma, right? There are so many, actually 40% approximately of men are more we-minded, and about 15-20% of women are more me-minded. One of the things I wanted to also explore was indeed the leadership. How, because our definition of leadership is definitely very me-minded. I believe, and I think I have also found scientific ground to say that the we mind can be just as good as a leader as the me mind. But I would love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think many of us have experienced that as we start in our careers. I am really honest, during my studies, for example, I came to Brussels at the age of 25, and I came with this vision, let's build Europe, and as men and women we have the same opportunities, of course. And in the beginning of our careers, it's often still the case, and if I think of a hierarchical organization, as long as we're still, I call it the interns, the assistants, on the lower kind of scales of our career, the we mind is also still very much rewarded. Working together, coming together as teams, collaborative. Yeah. But as soon as you grow in your career, as many say, the air gets thinner, and what gets rewarded is more perhaps me-minded characters or leaders, because there are less positions. You will have to be a bit, more assertive perhaps in certain positions. However, and you said it so well already, Jessica, it's that the we mind on these top positions is simply not as appreciated as the me mind. And I came to realize that as I was very young in those positions. I was at 29 a spokesperson at the Commission, again with that amazing vision, okay, let's change what is normal. But still, I was, often blocked with my own, doubts, because you enter into a world where, you're not taken seriously so often. If you kind of try to be a we-minder, or if you try to be open, sensitive, you have to swallow your sensitivity, your openness perhaps, sometimes also the humor, and be very serious, because at these positions, it is simply not rewarded. And even if we hear in so many business trainings, we need to improve our soft skills, we need to better communicate, work together, more empathy. I mean, what many women bring naturally already to the table at work is called soft skills, which I already, as a communicator, I don't like the term, because it already shows that our natural female, feminine, or we-minded superpowers, our empathy, our emotional intelligence, our sense to work together, is nice to have, but if you really want to make it in your career, and if you really want to get promoted when really the tough crises happen in your company, then the tough cookie gets rewarded or promoted, or visibility. And I think that needs to change. And what your book helps me to realize and to fight even harder for, that there is a misunderstanding on how to change that. Many organizations, also many policies that we see, try to simply have one goal, to try to get more diversity on top positions. More women there, of course we need that. But the underlying principle is that just because we're a woman in a top position, we cannot put again everything on our shoulders to change what is normal. We need to change the structures, we need to change the definition of success, promotion criteria, we need to change work culture basically. And here the we mind and me mind, understanding helps a lot, and I think can help many companies and organizations to rethink how do we make our workplace more attractive for more diverse leaders, rather than only focusing on how to get more women in these, or more different leaders into these positions, and then they sort themselves out. No, we need to change the incentives and the work conditions to make it more attractive.
But how to convince the me-minded leaders that we have? Because I meet a lot of women who are assertive and are kind of me-minded, and they get punished for it.
I think in general, the tide is changing and that people are waking up to realize we have to do something because the great resignation is happening. And, you know, we've seen the statistics in all the women in the workplace reports that especially middle to high management leaders, female, are leaving.
Yeah.
And so it's almost a question of talent retention. Sorry for the corporate speak. But if companies really do want to attract and keep their strong female talents, and again, bring the gender angle in, it is a question of training and culture, work culture.
Yeah.
Should someone be punished for having a me mind? I mean, beyond male or female, it's a question of does that personality fit into the workplace? I think that goes beyond your gender, but how does this actually play out in practice? I remember starting was anyone here on for the Hanbury event this week on Women in European Policy? No, good, so I can tell the same story. When I started my career as a journalist, the publisher said to me that he only hired alpha females and beta males because we were the same level. And as a very young and humble, I think I was 24 at the time, I kind of sat there and I was like, oh, Michael, how interesting. And it's only taken me, a couple of years to actually digest that and think, wow, so many things are wrong with this conversation. Yeah. But it's true that we still see ourselves in a certain light, as you were saying. I guess that's the culture. And you come in as a young woman, you're very ambitious, you're very keen to progress. And then there's a little bit of like, no, stay down, stay in your box. We had an excellent Women in Politics debate last month where Kiki Bakker said, generally, women are taught to stay in their lanes. We are taught to colour within the lines. We are taught to be good girls. Men are rewarded for being a little bit cheeky, a little bit naughty, for kind of, breaking the rules. And she used an example, I think, of Boris Johnson, which if this was Borisa Johnson, it would have been very different.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of someone who is so me-minded. And actually, at the end of the day, fortunately, my government sort of made a little bit of sense. And we're like, maybe not. I do have hope that collectively we are moving away from the me-mind mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. There's an economic argument there. I mean, profitability, growth and retaining talent.
There are lots of numbers. Yeah.
And how can we tackle it? To be cheeky, I sometimes also say we often focus on training those who are not yet represented. So we have a diversity officer, we have women empowerment trainings to make, so that women finally also apply.
Yeah.
So we need to focus, if we really want to change something,
on the people there.
those who are already there.
Exactly.
So we need to have me-mind empowerment. And I mean that. I sometimes say we don't need women empowerment, but men empowerment sometimes. And I mean it with all my heart. Because very often me-minded leaders are also a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
They sometimes lack confidence in being surrounded by diverse leaders who may be a bit different from them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, if I may say that sometimes we need to focus our training efforts, HR, resources, also to the me-minded leaders who are already there, to train them in diversity management skills, to be comfortable and still confident when there is a diverse set of leaders around the boardroom table.
Yeah, which would mean, in my words, to teach them to tap into their we mind, because the we mind is open to diversity. The we mind is about connecting with people, but not only with people. The we mind is also about connecting new ideas. So we need our we mind for innovation. There is no innovation without connecting the dots of seemingly unrelated issues. So one of the top strengths of the we mind, according to me, is that capability of gathering bits from here and there that seem as if they have nothing to do with each other, and then in the end integrating them into something new and something that changes the situation. A we mind, I go into the the brain side of we-mindedness and me-mindedness a little bit, but because it's so sensitive, because there are many people who resent the idea that women and men would have a different brain. So there is lots of evidence for it, and it is in the book. But the we mind leans more on the strengths of the right brain hemisphere. So it's visionary, it's seeing the big picture, it's imagining. The me mind is leaning on the left hemisphere, which is linear thinking. It cannot reproduce new, or it cannot produce new things. It can reproduce what is there, but it cannot come up with new things. So even inside us, we lean on, we constantly use both sides of our brain, obviously, but often those exact and sticking, the in-the-box thinking is valued more than the out-of-the-box thinking. So the we mind, me mind is also about that. There is also a chapter about communication, and this is something I found a real eye-opener myself when I found it. We as women are told so often that we need to be more confident, and we lack confidence, and we lack assertiveness, and which is totally not true. It is just a different communication style. And yeah, it is the we-minded style that is not assertive, but that is focusing on connection, on making sure that the other is heard. So again, I would say this is a leadership quality that is badly needed in today's workplace.
Yeah, when you asked me what my favorite chapter was, it's chapter number 6 about communication. It was really also
7.
the most eye-opening one. Maybe because I'm from that field as well. But I just want to support also what you just said. It was really revealing to me to realize, because I found myself there as well so much, that as we-minded communicators, we often, I look at all of you, I look for, are you with me? Can you follow? Do you agree? So we often, and that's what you coin as tentative language. So women often use words like, I'm not an expert, but, so just make sure everyone's on board, or, am I making sense? Just to make sure you're connected again. So this is very much we-minded language, but in a hardcore professional setting, we may see it as, she's not confident. So I found it so revealing to realize, and that's what I feel reading the book makes clear, is let's become confident in our authentic strengths. You help me understand myself better, recognize and appreciate my strengths that may sometimes in the past be coined as weaknesses because you didn't speak up, or but in reality we just look for connection. That's why we're sometimes asking questions, if that was okay. And that was really, really important. We need to talk about that more.
Yes, agreed. I think we, to use the royal we do want to build connections. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, I think most of us understand successful leaders are the ones, and you said it to yourself, who can tap into your heart as well. Because especially if you're working 10, 12, 14, God forbid, 16 hours a day in a space, you have to believe in what you're doing. And you have to feel that you are supported and uplifted and inspired beyond the paycheck, however nice it may be. And that's from the people around you. No matter how boring, tough, draining the work can be, it's the people that, I believe, people that you're surrounded with make so much of a difference. And the language that you use both ways, as the leader, as someone who's working their way up the leadership, impacts on everything. This moving away from I think, I believe, as you say, these inviting questions. I try not to diminish myself or my capabilities, and I encourage other women, especially at the 9, to do the same. More, am I making sense? Like, is that clear for you? Do you understand? So almost projecting it back so that they can respond, as opposed to, I'm not the expert, but there was a great quote about this, like a Twitter meme. Someone saying, a woman says, I'm not sure, but I think. is code for I'm 100% sure and I know I'm right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But we feel
Yeah.
we have to, again, push ourselves down.
Yeah, but my point is that it's not really pushing yourself down. It is
Inviting.
inviting. It is making sure that the other feels not threatened by you, by putting yourself on the same level with the other. And indeed, sometimes it's often interpreted as pushing yourself down, but the intention is not necessarily that. And I think, well, I hope that by reading this book that people who communicate will be more aware of all these things that we do and how it is interpreted by the other people. Another thing I thought was for me very important actually, and maybe I started realizing more and more after having written the book, is how the two cannot exist without each other. You know, there's always, they're like two sides of a coin. If you are me-minded, and so that means that you're all about yourself, and you need to, you want to feel great about yourself, but you need others to feel great about yourself, because if there's nobody listening to you, then yeah, it's kind of like, oh, okay.
I'm sure there are some that would still feel great about
Okay.
themselves.
And vice versa. The we mind is about connection, but connection makes you feel good as well. So it's always the two cannot exist without the other. Maybe in extreme cases, and the next book will be about extreme cases. But I have two more questions. One is, what for you, I mean, a lot has been already said, but if you had to say one thing to the audience, like, okay, this is definitely something that you must read in this book, or the takeaway from this book, what would that be?
Mine is the first one, is just the relief. You're speaking from so many of our hearts, I feel, and to feel supported in who we already are. So this is my main takeaway. It's also to feel, supported. So reading this, like having this book in my bag, felt like, okay, I'm not alone. I know myself better, and actually having a we mind is a very powerful thing. Yeah. And also for anybody looking for figures, statistics on that we're actually still not there, that we still very much work in an alpha male or alpha dominated work culture in so many sectors. You also have so many figures and statistics and really, really good resources as well in the book. So that's also my takeaway. It's a resource. I will come back to it, to look up figures, to quote from, and fantastic resources. So that's the relief, number one, and the confirmation. Okay, we need to do more, and I'm not alone with the sometimes feeling I'm the only one struggling or doubting myself.
Yeah, I think for me, again, it's maybe a bit contrary for me to say this, is how it goes beyond gender. And it's quite refreshing for me to read a book that isn't about the woes of the women in the world. If you want that, I have a whole library upstairs. But actually, it's broader, and again, it goes beyond who we are as women, who we are as men, but who we are as leaders. And for me, I'm always interested in leadership, because sadly, we still do not have representation of strong leadership, I believe, men and women. Well, maybe we did, and sadly, they're retiring from burnout. So there should be a wake-up call for us as a society. If the leaders that we admire the most and look up to the most are quitting because it's just too much, what are we expecting from them? Yeah. What are we demanding? And it is we, it's us. Yeah. So how can then we work from within ourselves and project that outward?
My last question, and then I would open up the floor for your questions. But all this, I mean, the takeaways that you have from the book, will it lead to anything that you change in your own behavior, thinking? Like, is there something you will stop doing or start doing as a result of reading the book?
Yeah, I think I will start to speak differently because we have now a frame, that invites us to talk differently beyond the gender lens. I will dare to be even more myself, because I feel supported in, how I am, sometimes so sensitive, looking for connection, not wanting to work on my own on things. And I will push in anything that I do in my work, companies and organizations, even harder to change work culture and really go beyond just talking about numbers on seats. And finally, the inspiration I had after reading the book is that Europe is very much a we-minded international organization.
Yeah.
Should be.
And I think that was the reason why I wanted to come here, in a very personal reason, because in my own life or path, I often felt, oh my God, that I'm German, so how did these countries come together after the war? The war is very much a me-minded, me-led focus. And create in the 50s, so more than 70 years ago, a we-minded international organization. And so many things like harmonization, mutual recognition of standards is all very much we-minded. And I could also imagine that that's what attracted me as a we-minded woman so much to work here. And if we look at the political problems and tensions that there are between member states or between countries, it always comes back to the we-mind and the me-mind as well. So that is also my, talking about Europe perhaps in those terms as well.
Yeah.
It's very inspirational for me, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, I've already done it actually. So I was very lucky, as I said, to have the book a good while ago. And from September onwards at the 9, we are doing a whole series of events around leadership and inviting a lot more male speakers actually. So I'm very interested to hear, again, going beyond the gender roles, but actually what do I as a leader, what can I bring and share? And putting that into a different context, which is new for me and which is going to be different for the 9, but still worthwhile, and I think a new perspective. So there we are, watch this space, men on stage. Not like that, ladies,
Men
sorry.
in the
Not like that.
Congratulations, Jessica, on your book.
Really.
Such a fantastic. How do you feel today? Having
Yeah.
published that?
Well, I feel great actually. I feel humbled. I feel, but also very, very happy that you're all here and that you wanted to support me in this mission, because it is really my mission to spread this this way of thinking. I really think that it is a solution to many problems that we have that go far beyond indeed the gender balance thing, but more how we think about our big organizations, the problems in politics, too many to
Everything.
yeah, exactly. The corporate problems, all that. So yes, I feel actually very grateful. That is the right word to say. Do you have any questions? Martin.
But the question is, in your research, did you find insight about how we can enter this journey of personal development from me-mind to we-mind? And is there a link with enhancement of consciousness?
I'm thinking about that myself as well. How can we invite me-minded leaders to become more we-minded? Which means that they should look inside, and I hope to develop indeed, together with other people, a way to start addressing these things and to find the way in. I don't think that the right way to do it is to change all the leaders with women, because first of all, this is exactly the problem now, that why I believe the male leaders are hanging on to their position because they feel threatened, and rightfully so. I mean, obviously, if a woman is going to take your place, you're out. So that threat has to be taken seriously. I think the first way to address it is by, are we minded, connecting to and acknowledging that fear, and the feeling of loss of status and relevance, maybe, by and I also believe that by transforming those me-minded leaders, if the leadership becomes more we-minded, then automatically a lot will change, right? Every place will become more welcoming to diverse people, women, but also other people. And the focus will shift from profit to the planet, and all the things. It's also an emergency, right? We can't go on like this. Today I read that in the last 40 years we have pumped up so much water from subterraneous aquifers that the axis of the Earth has tilted, and everywhere the Earth is at risk of sinking. So water from the seas, floods will happen, etc. So, it is really, I think, more and more people understand that something has to change. So I hope that our strongly we-minded leaders will listen, or else that enough people will take action to stop them, right? I think that also we need to stop the total self-centered leaders in this world who think they can get away with anything just because they are extremely rich, right? But that's a collective thing that needs to happen.
Well, congratulations, I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't read the book yet, but I already have the workshop, so I know a little bit. So let's say that you were remind in the past. What advice would you give to yourself, let's say 16 or 25 years old, in a me-mind world?
So the question was, what advice would I have given to my 16 or 20-year-old self in this me-minded world? Indeed, at the time I was more we-minded than me-minded, but I think that I shifted to me-mindedness. But my advice would be indeed to start seeing the values of the way you are. Just to accept yourself the way you are, and to start, instead of disapproving of all the things that you think are wrong with you, to start looking at, hey, how can this be an asset instead of a flaw? That would be my advice to my young self. And it would be my advice to all of us, actually, to give yourself permission to just be who you are. You don't need to change. It's fine. You are fine the way you are. And there are times, because there is a hormonal aspect to being we-minded or me-minded. Just knowing that in itself is already enough to say, okay, so currently I feel more we-minded, and that may have to do with my cycle. Or currently I feel more me-minded, and that may have to do with the competitive environment that I'm in, and that makes me produce more testosterone, more cortisol, etc. So being aware of it helps you mitigate the effect. It helps you feel okay with it. Okay, so this is a temporary thing. It's going to pass. Just knowing that in itself is already very empowering, I find.
Thank you.
Of course, I'm very proud of you as your sister.
Thank you.
And well, I've learned a lot about the book that I still haven't read. But I have a question. You know, my oldest son is a banker in London, very male-dominated work environment. He is an extreme team player, as well in his personal life as in his professional life. Last weekend, their bankers team went to Budapest for a drink fest, which is a male-dominated, we-minded thing. It's all about, you know, connecting
Yes.
and making the group stronger.
Yeah.
So But how do you feel about that? Because it's definitely not inclusive. Not that women aren't allowed, but I think women don't want to be there, and they aren't there.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can define them as me-minded,
No.
because they work as a team and they can't work without being a team, but they're still all men.
Yeah.
So what's your vision on that?
Well, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make, that me-mindedness is not about being male and we-mindedness is not about being female. But we tend to have this division in how we lean. That is partly learned, partly biological. It's all explained in the book. But you're right that a male team obviously is we-minded. What is different between men and women on the whole is that men connect over things to do together, and women connect over emotions or just discussing together how you feel or
Sex in the City.
Sex in the City. But obviously we-mindedness is needed to function for every company, and all leadership is we-minded in essence, because leadership should be in the service of the group. The thing is that we often elect me-minded people, individuals, as our leaders. But again, that's there's actually, I quote some behavioral psychologists who have noticed, and it's a common saying, of course, that power corrupts. But they also notice how people who get more power become more me-minded. I mean, they don't say me-minded, but it is, and that's hormonal. Power, it goes together with hormones. It goes together with testosterone. Power makes you produce more testosterone, and testosterone has a direct effect on how empathic you can be. But the bankers, as individuals, they may be me-minded, I don't know, but of course they have a we mind as well. What would be a good balance between we-mindedness and me-mindedness? I think that's up to you. I have tried very hard in this book to not judge, to not say one is better than the other, because that's the core of the problem that we have, that we value one more than the other. I think most of us are somewhere in the middle. And you can work on shifting the balance, but is it necessary? As long as you accept who you are and you are happy with yourself, I think that's more important than finding the right balance. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up. And I have to admit, when I was practicing, I practiced very much not to say, I think it's time to wrap up. Because that's one of those things, right? But I still think it's time to wrap up. I would like you to know that I will be, well, maybe it's better to have a table outside because inside it's very busy, but there will be somewhere where I sit and you can buy the book and I will sign the book for you. I want to donate, for every book that gets sold tonight, I want to donate €1.50 to the Equality Initiative of the Nine, which is Georgia's non-profit that supports social diversity and equality on all levels.
She didn't tell me that. That's so nice. Thank you.
So please buy as many books as you want.
Now you really must buy.
I did bring something to say thank you to you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica.
I would also like you to applaud
Really?
Anushka, who has been capturing our event tonight. And she is available for other events if you ever organize something. And before I let you go, there is one more thing I need to do. Traditionally, at least in my previous book launches, one offers the first copy of a book to an important person or a symbolically important person. And there's another thing I haven't told you, but I had invited our Belgian Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, to be that person. So you may be glad that he didn't show up.
No comment.
I mention him in the book. There's even a picture of him. Where is it? Yep, here, with me, presenting his first book. And I would have loved to have the occasion to remind him of his we-minded side. But he had other things to do tonight, which is a blessing in disguise, because this gives me the opportunity to offer this symbolic first copy to someone who is much, much, much more important, to me at least. And that is my one and only husband. Hugh, who always shows up for me. Dear Hugh, if you hadn't told me maybe 10,000 times, write your book, write your book, write your book, we would not have been here tonight. Thank you.
Much better, no?
Not yet. Thank you for believing in this project sometimes more than I did. All the ways you have supported me, the list is too long to go through. But I just want to tell you how happy I am that we're a team. Thank you.
I find it very difficult to be emotional, but yeah, I'm not quite sure who's the we-minded and who's the me-minded man in this team. I think we change every all the time, but I have to say that I changed a lot while not working with Jessica, but obviously looking at it, and it has changed me too. It gave me a completely new way of looking at things which I had never agreed with in people talking about the workplace, people talking about how we should behave, and it gave me a new pattern. And I think Jessica's right that if this could be taken by men too, and I think it can, it's a new way of adjusting the balance in what we value. Because I don't think that we can continue always giving the boss seat to the me-minded narcissist. And I really want this book and its ideas and Jessica's whole thing, because it's her work obviously, and it's been wonderful to watch this book develop and grow. So, thank you, Jessica.
Now you can kiss.
It's like a wedding. Thank you. It's time to get a drink. And a book. And a book. And a book.
Oh, but I record many things. How can I say to you? Yeah, I will.
You're an inspiration.
Thank you.